הריני מקשר עצמי לכל הצדיקים האמיתים שוכן וכל הצדיקים האמיתים שוכן אף הקדוש מה שבארץ המה או יבחר לרבנו הקדוש צדיק יסודנו וחנו וכוחו כמו רבנו נחמן תגן עצמך נחמן לאומן זכותו תגן עלינו ועל כל ישראל maybe it's there we go, right? I think we got where we left off last time.
Yeah.
I'm just going to leave this noted here. So we talked about last class, Torah Samech, lesson 60. We talked about that the main rectification of the intellect comes through the breath, the arichut neshima. So that the main way to ensure that the intellect is in its proper state, proper order, so that you're able to contemplate, you're able to get to the madregot of hitbonenut, you're able to enter the pathways of contemplation, is only whenever the oils of the body are kept clean and are kept moist, essentially, that you don't dry them out, because the intellect is like a lit candle we talked about, and it's lit through the oils of the body. The mind in itself is the wick, the oils are essentially the oil, and it's lit up to go into the bonanut, which is the light we're talking about here. So Rabbeinu says, we talked about last class, that when there's no oil for the wick to essentially draw its energy from, it's going to dry out. And what ends up happening is the fire can't be lit, you cannot enter into the bonanut. The practical meaning of that is chas v'shalom, when a person falls into pegam abrit, he dries out the oils of the body, because the source of where all the seed is drawn from is the mind, the moach. And when chas v'shalom, a person essentially uses a seed in the wrong place, or wastes a seed chas v'shalom, or does any of this form of pegam abrit, falls into hevel hayofi. Even at that stage, just hevel hayofi, without forget the inyan of zivug, or forget the inyan, just hevel hayofi, this desire for a beautiful woman, you're essentially drying up the fires of the body, the oil of the body, because all that desire is in the heart. And the heart is a burning hot sensation, essentially. The lungs is what cools off the heart. It's what fans the heart to make sure that the oil of the body are kept clean and are kept, are rendered, what you call, moist. What ends up happening though is if the heart is allowed to go into its desires, what we call shrirut lev, the illusions of the heart, which David HaMelech enters into in Tehillim, he speaks about it, which has to do with tava. So anytime a person has excess sexual desire, especially what we're talking about here, because that's the topic we're entering. When a person has excess or any pgamabrit, chad v'shalom, or falls into excess desire, this or that, beautiful woman, whatever it is, the lungs don't have enough energy to cool off the burning heat of the heart. The heart is essentially overpowering the lungs. What ends up happening now is that there's too much heat in the body, and therefore the oils are burnt out. So they can't be used, they can't be brought to the brain anymore. Yeah. So there's no more energy for the brain to feed off of, which is why a person becomes crazy. Meshugaim. Meshugaim, shigaon comes from the word insanity. Insanity literally means because your brain is not metukan, it's not rectified. Yeah. Your sechel is out of its proper place because there's no oils to feed it. So Rabbeinu is essentially explaining that the main way to sustain the oils of the body and the moisture of the body is through the breath that we talked about, the neshima, the arichut neshima, the extended breath that we're talking about. That which breath? The breath a person takes in whenever he inhales. That inhaling essentially allows the lungs to cool off the heat of the heart, and with this you create a kiyum sechel. You create essentially a sustenance, and you create essentially the sechel is able to be mekayem, it's able to be fulfilled, it's able to go on. So now it's able to be lit in hitbonenut. So what we talked about, ner Hashem nishmat adam, the candle of Hashem is the soul of man. That the main way that the ner Hashem, which is the sechel, the intellect, is being mekayem and being metukan, is being fulfilled and being rectified, is through what? The neshima. Ner Hashem nishmat adam. Through the neshima of a man, he's able to light up the candle, to keep the mind clean. So we find that all this, that through yira, which is to guard the desire of the heart from falling into hevel yofi, chemdaf yofi anashim. When you protect your heart from desiring a beautiful woman, falling into the physical beauty, you merit arichut amim, which then becomes the kli to draw down ashirut, and then Now that you have the Ashirut, you're able to enter Yitbonanu. Nice. Ushlemut.
ושלמות היראה היא בבחינת שלוש קווים, בחינות מורה, שמיים, ומורה רבח, ומורה אב ואם. וכשיש חכם הדור שזוכה לתלמידים הגונים ובנים הגונים, אזי היראה בשלמות, כי יראת החכם והרב שבדור הוא בחינת מורה שמיים, והתלמידים יש להם יראת הרב, בחינת מורה רבח, והבנים יש להם מורה אב ואם, שעל ידי שלוש יראות אלו היראה בשלמות.
Nice. So, the perfection of fear, now Rabbeinu is going to go into the subject of fear because we're saying that Yirah is the main key. Yirah brings us to Arichot Damim, which then brings us into Ashirut, which then brings us into Yitbonanut. But the perfection of fear is only complete, or fear is only complete, so that now that your fear is able to bring you to Arichot Damim, how do you ensure that the fear is able to bring you to the Arichot Damim? And now Rabbeinu is explaining this, that the perfection of fear is when it's what? In the aspect of three kavim, three pillars. Three different extremities. Mm-hmm. Right, middle, left. Which is connected to the subject that we entered the lesson with, which is the Idra Rabbah. That Rabbeinu enters the subject of lesson 60 with the story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. That Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai opens up the Idra Rabbah when him and all the students are in the cave of Parashat Naso, the secrets in the Idra Rabbah. He starts explaining the idea of the upper Torah. The Torah of the hidden ancient one, the Torah of the Mashiach. Mm-hmm. And how a person has to, that essentially now he was going to get into the secrets of the Kabbalah, especially the secrets of the Tikkun Atik, the rectifications of Atik, the hidden ancient one. All this stuff is going to allude to what we're talking about right now, which are the three pillars. Because before, it was rectified into three pillars, the Sfirot essentially, that you had the middle pillar, which is Keter, in the middle you have Tiferet, you have Yesod, and then you have Malchut, and then on the right you have Chochmah, you have Netzach, and then you have Chochmah, you have Chesed, and then you have Netzach, and then on the left you have Bina, you have Gvura, and then you have Hod. Those three pillars weren't essentially three pillars before. They were actually one. Before it was structured into what we call Olam HaTikun, the world of rectification. So before it was structured into three pillars, it was actually one pillar. But it didn't have any ability to sustain itself because it was too much gvura.
What is putting it to three pillars?
Three pillars, it creates a balance in Mishpat. The right, the left, and the middle. Whereas everything on top of one another is just a fight between who's on top versus the bottom. There's no channels for which each one can interact with another to sweeten each other and all these.
You're saying Hashem did it for split into three for us because we couldn't handle it all in one?
Essentially, yeah, it's too much gvura. Olam HaTohu, when we say there's many worlds before we get into what we call Atilu Beria Yetzirah Asiyah. Before Atilu Beria Yetzirah Asiyah were formed into what we call Olam HaTikun, the world of rectification. There was Olam HaTohu beforehand. There's many worlds before. There's Akudim, Nekudim, Berudim. In Nekudim is the Bechina of Olam HaTohu. And Olam HaTohu is this idea where there was no real inyan of partzuf. There wasn't this idea yet where there was structure between three pillars yet. It was too much gvura. Mm-hmm. So it was one on top of the other. That's why Rabbeinu says you need three kavim, which is getting into very deep Kabbalah that I myself, I'm not at the madriga to understand nor to teach, especially because I have to know what I'm speaking about before I say it. To understand this, obviously, we have to go into Etz Chaim of the Ari HaKadosh, and obviously understand what the Zohar HaKadosh is meaning here in Parashat Naso. But at a simple element, let's just say that before Olam HaTikun, the pillars weren't divided into three, it was into one. Which is why Rabbeinu is going to speak about three pillars right now. What has to do with Yirat Shamayim? We're thinking of it, okay, Rabbeinu says three pillars, but what's he really talking about? He's going to the beginning of the lesson to explain the rectification that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is talking about in the Idra. Now he's explaining it at a practical level, how we're able to do that within the Bechina Gira, which is much more attainable to someone like us. Yeah. So he's going to explain what it means. That for Yirat to be perfect, it needs to be in three kavim, three extremities, three divisions, three pillars. Bechinot, Mora Shamayim, the first one being fear of heaven, which is the Bechina of Keter, which is the middle pillar. Mora Rabach, the fear of your master, the fear of your teacher, the fear of the Rav, which is the Bechina of Chochmah, which is the right pillar. And Mora Ava'em, and the fear of their father and mother, which is the Bechina Bina, which is the leader of the left pillar. Okay? 3 pillars. And when there's the wise man of the generation, really referencing those 5 neshamot who we're talking about, who are at the Bechina of Moshe Rabbeinu, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Yari HaKadosh Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Nachman. When there's a Chacham Ador, and when there is the Chacham Ador, for example, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, she's Zocher Letamidim Adonim, who merits proper students, fitting students. For example, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had a student, Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Elazar, his son, which is why in the Idra, if I'm not mistaken, is it here? Yeah. He put Rabbi Elazar Bere Odve Kame, Ul Rabbi Abba Misitra Acha. He put Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Abba on 2 separate sides of him. Rabbi Elazar, he put him to the right, which is Bechin of Chochmah, and Rabbi Abba, he put him to the left, from the left side, which is the Bechin of Bina. Which is why Rabbi Anu is going to discuss what the Bechin of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is right now and how he's doing the Yira, he's rectifying the Yira, through the fact that he's sitting his son on the right and Rabbi Abba on the left. And how Rabbi Anu is explaining that, the secret of this Idra Rabba, what is really happening. We're going to go back into it, because Rabbeinu is going to explain all this at the end within 1 paragraph, but we're trying to see it inside, how it connects while we're at it right here, you know? So, when there's a wise man of the generation, like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, we saw in the beginning of the Idra Rabbah, who merits Tamidim Agonim, like his students, and worthy children, like Rabbi Elazar. Then fear is in its perfect state, because there's 3 pillars, there's 3 heads. Because the fear of the wise man and the Rav of the generation, this is what we call fear of heaven. Because the true Chacham, the true Tzaddik, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Nachman, they don't have any fear except for Hashem Yisbarach. The Baal Shem Tov already as a kid was taught from his father not to fear anyone for Hashem. There's a famous story where he was in the forest traveling, he was doing Bodedut, and he was visiting, like the hidden tzaddikim used to do back then, and he was a child, he was like 3 or 4 years old. And he walked into it could have been 5, 6, I forget. And he walked into a home, an abandoned home in the forest, and he saw a bunch of shadim, demons, engaging in the house. And they looked at him and they tried to scare him. The Baal Shem Tov had no fear. And they asked him, how come you don't fear us? He said, because my father already told me there's only one person to fear, it's Hashem. That's the Baal Shem Tov already we're talking about. Shlemut Ha'ira. The Chacham Ador, because he's at such a madriga v'yirat shamayim, it's funny, I was just reading this in Tikkun Zohar in the introduction. It's very good to read Tikkun Zohar during the month of Elul. Very, very big stuff. It speaks about the different types of yira. So look what he says over here. He speaks about 10 levels of yira. Darga asira be'yirat Hashem, the 10th level of yira of yirat shamayim. Itira v'itira. And Rabbeinu brings this down in Sichot Haran. There's fear and there's fear. Meaning there's madrigot. There's fear on top of fear on top of fear. And Rabbeinu says even in Sichot Haran that Yirat Shamayim itself has fear of Hashem. The Midah of Yira has fear of Hashem. We don't even understand what it means, but like how there's madrigot upon madrigot upon madrigot. There's Keter, there's the Chochmah, there's the Bina, there's different madrigot of fear. And the Tzaddik Emet is obviously tapping into the highest madriga of fear, Yirat Shamayim, which is way beyond what we think Yirat HaOnesh, because the lowest madriga is what we're going to say is Yirat HaOnesh, fear and punishment, right? Yeah. But then there's madrigot upon madrigot, and then there's Yirat HaRomemut. There's 2 main categories of fear: Yirat HaOnesh, Yirat HaRomemut, fear of punishment, and fear of God's exaltedness. But within fear of God's exaltedness, there's madrigot upon madrigot. Yeah. So it's true tzaddik, he taps into the highest of madrigot, and he's constantly pushing that boundary. Which is why Rabbeinu said that Ani Yotzar She'yirat Shamayim, I'm a treasure house of the fear of heaven. That anyone who wants to grab from it should come to me. Because the true tzaddik, he possesses the real fear of Hashem. And there's a story with Rabbi Chaikel, if I'm not mistaken, one of Rabbeinu's students, who asked Rabbeinu to see a dead soul. Rabbeinu said, if I show you a dead soul, you will not be able to stand it. And Rabbi Chaikel kept asking him, and Rabbeinu showed it to him, and he couldn't move. I think the Ari HaKadosh even did this to one of his students, if I'm not mistaken. I forget who. think it could have been Rabbeinu also. Essentially, I forget who it was. Rabbeinu the Ari Akadosh showed one of his students Yirat Shamayim the way I think the Arizal wanted to show his students what he saw once. He saw all the demons, all the angels walking around him and this and that. He said, if you guys saw what I saw, you guys wouldn't be able to survive. And he showed them for 1 second. They couldn't move. They were completely in awe, because the Ari Akadosh was seeing absolutely everything. Same was true with the true tzaddikim. Rabbeinu showed Rabbi Chaikel that soul he couldn't move. He said, take it away from me. Take away this yirah. Rabbeinu gave Rabbi Chaikel, even I think it was one of the students, his form of yirah, like the yirat shamayim that he felt, even just a drop of it. And he said, take it away. I can't do this. It could have been Rabbi Yudo, Rabbi Shmuel Isaac, I forget who. But just to show you the fact that the true tzaddik, his form of yirah, we don't even understand. So when we think for a second that the true tzaddik won't commit an avera because his yirat shamayim is so perfect, it's not an avera. It's just, where's the ratzon of Hashem for him? Mm-hmm. In which direction does he go? Is the ratzon of Hashem to do this mitzvah or to do that mitzvah? Like Rabbeinu once struggled before he passed away, a couple months before he passed away. He came to Rabbi Natan and he told Rabbi Natan, he said, I don't know what to do because there are thousands upon thousands of dead souls that come to me every single day for rectification. And then there's those who are alive like you. The dead souls know they need me, so it's easy for me to fix them technically because they will do anything that I tell them to. Mm-hmm. But you guys have free will. And the fact that you guys have free will, it takes it much longer. So Rabbi Natan told him, he said, isn't it much bigger to influence someone who has free will than it is someone who doesn't? He said, you're absolutely right, but the time I'm losing. That's what Rabbeinu's answer was. And he was really debating this dilemma for months and months and months. We're talking about Rabbi Nachman. He had a question. He came to Rabbi Natan with an actual question, like a sincere sichat chaverim in a sense. Chaverim, but like, yeah. And he came to Rabbi Natan, and Rabbi Natan told him, like, focus on the living because that's where the real avodah is. And Rabbeinu said, but you're forgetting. The amount of time I could rectify thousands of souls, it can maybe take me to rectify one while they're alive. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much yetzirah, there's so much free will. So that was the debate Rabbeinu was going through until before Rabbeinu passed away. Rabbeinu said, Ani rotze lishar benechem. I want to dwell amongst you. And that was him saying that I'm going to fix you guys. That I'm not giving up on the living nor the dead. That I'm staying here and that I'm still going to do it. The avodah of the true tzaddik. So for him, it's not even a madrega. Because his yirat shamayim is so strong, there's no madrega of sin for him. Mm-hmm. It's just, which midah am I doing? Vura chesed. Do I have to make sure that there's a balance between them? How to sweeten the judgments, suffering in the world, how to take it upon myself, like things that we can't even imagine.
Sounds tired.
Yeah. Rabbeinu said, it's crazy. Someone came to Rabbeinu. I think this idea is brought in Chaim Moran. That Rabbeinu addressed a question that people had that was asking Rabbeinu, or this question was actually asking Rabbeinu why it is that he looks so serious or sad all the time.
He was up there asking the Rebbe why?
Yeah. That people were noticing this, that why Rabbeinu looked so serious or sad all the time. And people, Chad v'Shalom, today, they take it a terrible...
I thought what do you mean? I thought he looked, what does that mean he looked sad?
He looked sad, right? He looked down.
Like all the time?
Dejected.
Or just moment, you're saying?
No, in general. Like Rabbeinu always looked dejected. The entire point is that he taught simcha and this and that, but what's really happening with Rabbeinu? That Rabbeinu gave an external appearance that was different than the teachings essentially that he taught, that everyone should be besimcha, this and that, right? And I'll explain the answer. So people today, Chad v'Shalom, they go on to create drashot and this and that about how Rabbi Nachman suffered with mental illness. Chaz v'Shalom, lomar dvarim kaale. Chaz v'Shalom, to say such things. Chaz v'Shalom. It gives me just to even say that, I shouldn't even say it, because it's such a reshut. It's really wickedness to say that. But because we're talking about a true tzaddik who's at the bechina of simcha all the time. But what we're talking about here is why Rabbeinu gave off the external appearance, the physical appearance, as if he was dejected all the time. Why Rabbeinu was always shamefaced, always red, always like down. Why he looked down all the time.
Humility.
So what is the answer? answered like this. He said, I'm going through a forest, chopping down trees that have been growing for thousands of years. And I'm creating pathways in Avodat Hashem for all of you guys. So for me to fight against the Yetzer Hara, I have to put on a serious exterior, a serious appearance, because the only way to accomplish what I need to accomplish for you guys is to put on that serious face. But he said, inside, I'm completely happy.
Yeah.
It's just I'm engaging against war, against the Yetzer Hara in war constantly, every single moment. For you, for the entire world, for the generations in the past, present, and future. The true tzaddik, it's like what Moshe Rabbeinu brings down the Torah. V'et asher yesh lo po, v'et asher einenu po, like Rashi brings down. That who's that Sinai? Those who were there and those who were not there, meaning the souls that would come later. So Rabbeinu writes in Sichot Haran that everything that he brought down, every single dibur that he taught, every single teaching, from Sichot Haran to Chayei Moran to Likutei Moran to Likutei Etzot to whatever it is, Sipurei Masiyot, all those teachings are applicable to the past, the present, the future. After the coming Mashiach, Tchiyat HaMetim. Because there's a madrigal in which you can study that. It's all applicable. And he's teaching that for everyone, from the beginning of creation, to the before creation, which is the Sipurei Masiyot, to the end, to way after. So, what we're talking about here is someone who needs to engage in war constantly to rectify everything, from beginning to end. And to do that, he needs to put on a serious face.
I did not know that. That was his...
That on the external level, you always used to see Rabbeinu like in brokenheartedness constantly.
So interesting.
Rabbi Natan, though, on the other hand, on the external level, was always happy.
So interesting.
And Rabbeinu said, I don't want you guys to learn from me B'chinav Simcha because it's not applicable.
I just can't imagine if you're reading like Sichot Haran, like the teachings, I can imagine someone with a serious face like giving that amazing Torah over. You know what I mean?
No, but sometimes Rabbeinu was obviously laughing and in a jovial mood. Yeah. But a lot of the times Rabbeinu had to go through certain stages where you used to have to show panim, like physical appearances or faces that weren't necessarily as pleasant. When Rabbi Natan first drew close to Rabbeinu, right around Purim, or right after Rabbi Nachman taught about lesson 6, Rabbeinu, right after, he drew in Rabbi Natan, he embarrassed him. Purposefully, Rabbi Natan at a Seudah. And Rabbi Natan stayed silent. He listened to what Rabbi Nachman says in lesson 6 of Likutei Moran. Until Rabbeinu, a little bit after, hugged him and embraced him. Because the job of the tzaddik a lot of the times is in order to bring the student to the next madriga, he needs to make the student fall into busha. He needs to embarrass the student, to rectify the soul, and then to bring it to the next madriga. For many reasons I obviously don't understand, because we're talking about the true tzaddik's kavana. Why Moshe Rabbeinu sometimes has to say, Shmu na morim, or I forget the language. Listen now, you rebels.
Yeah, after the rock.
After the rock, exactly.
Wow.
This rebuke, why Yaakov has to rebuke his. This Bechina, Rabbi Nachman says, and by the way, this inyan of the true tzaddik, a lot of people like to use their logic to explain why Rabbi Nachman is different a lot of the time with this or that, or why Rabbi Nachman is happy. Rabbeinu addressed the answer in Chayei Moran. He said, but don't think for 1 second I'm not happy, because I am very, very happy.
It just blew my mind, because it's like, you would never, I don't know, I just never knew that he had that face.
Yeah, that's
his Torah is like...
Exactly. But that's because Rabbeinu wants us to understand that that's the main inyan. For him, the true tzaddik, he's doing a completely different avodah. It's not applicable.
Yeah.
But for us, what's applicable is to give off the external simcha, like the way Rabbi Natan said. Rabbeinu used to never stand and do shliach tzibur. The first time Rabbeinu was shliach tzibur was chazan in front of the student was after the yotzer of his mother. Was on the yotzer of his mother. Rabbeinu was never chazan for 25 years. Or it could have been for, this was what Rabbi Natan was already there. It could have been for 32 years or 35 years. I don't know how long. Rabbeinu passed away at 38. And this was already after Rabbi Natan drew close. So Rabbeinu was not chazan till the age of 30 something in front of everyone. Or Rabbeinu never announced the tekiyot for Rosh Hashanah, which is what the Hasidim used to do. They either used to blow or used to announce the tekiyot. Rabbeinu never did any of that. Rabbeinu was always in the corner doing something completely different. When they were praying the Amidah, Rabbeinu said on Rosh Hashanah, he said, you guys, once you guys are done, he said, don't wait for me. for Shacharit. Rabbeinu spent his Shacharit of Rosh Hashanah for 3 hours within the Amidah. 3 hours. The students already had gone to eat their meal at that point. So we're talking about here things that the tzaddik, he's fighting wars against the Yetzer Hara. He's in upper world that we cannot understand. When he's giving a Torah, he's not only giving a Torah for this world, he's giving a Torah for the next world too. In the Yeshiva Shel Mana, he's giving a Torah. So it's something that you can try to comprehend, but you cannot comprehend at all. So what did Rabbeinu say? The only way you can comprehend a little bit of the true tzaddik is by looking at the students. Because from the students, you can get the face of the true tzaddik.
You can understand what they're really teaching.
Exactly. So what did he say?
So
it's like a stamp. Exactly. Rabbi Natan is what we learned from. Because Rabbi Natan was giving off the actual teaching of Rabbeinu the way Rabbeinu wanted us to apply it. Rabbeinu says, I'll give you a very good example. Lesson 64. Nobody is capable of entering a book of philosophy. You cannot study a book of philosophy. He says it's completely SO. Completely SO. Whether it's all those philosophers, it could be anyone, it could be Freud, it could be this, it could be anything. All these people.
Freud is Jewish.
You're right. You're right, Karl Marx, all these people, they're all Jews. I'm to show you. That go against contrary to the Torah and so many things. The books of Aristotle, the books of this, the books of that. Rabbeinu said even Jewish books, Moreh Nevuchim, do not pick up, don't even open it. Rabbeinu said, happy is the eye who has never seen this book. The Guide for the Perplexed, of the Rambam. Rabbeinu said, never open up that sefer. Outright, he's saying everything, right? Now Rabbeinu said, nobody can study the Sfarim because the second you enter it, you're entering into a place of klipa that you will not be able to come out from. He said, you're going to damage your emunah and neshama automatically. Whether you think you come out of it on top or not, you're damaging your neshama entirely. He says not only that, you will lose your tzelem elokim. So Rabbeinu says that in lesson 64, but then he says how the true tzaddik, who's at the Bechina of Moshe Rabbeinu, has to study those Sfarim to lift out the Nishamot who have fallen into there. But only the Nishama of Moshe Rabbeinu, because only the Nishama of Moshe Rabbeinu can fight against Amalek. And what is Amalek? The stumbling block of epical sort of heresy. Which is what the Even Negev, there's a stumbling block across each Madrega. There's a stumbling block within each of the seven within each Madrega, I think, or something of the 7 wisdoms. And the tzaddik has to fall 7 times and pick himself back up each time. But the stumbling block is that heresy, is that safek, is that doubt that attacks. And the only person who can come out on top is the true tzaddik. Because his emunah is so shalem, he will completely win with his emunah. Only he can go down there and redeem those neshamot that have fallen into that klipa. But if it's anyone else, you will automatically be harmed. So what do we see here? The true tzaddik Sebel is totally different. Moshe Rabbeinu, what did he say? I forget the language, but I want you to stand here with me. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu. Standing here with me, meaning what? Separate from your wife. When everyone else had the obligation to be with their wife. Moshe Rabbeinu had the obligation to separate from his wife. Things that we do not understand. Which is why Rabbeinu in the second marriage of his was never with his wife physically.
Sorry, this is random. Rabbeinu, he had children?
Yeah. Rabbeinu had 4 daughters and 2 sons. A lot of them passed away though when they were young. Both sons passed away when they were young. Within like the first year. And a couple of daughters passed away. There was Sarah though. Rabbeinu spoke a lot about his daughters. Especially Sarah. He said, the Ruach HaKodesh that is on my daughters is something different. But with regard to Sarah, we can't even talk about it. It's on the verge of prophecy. So lots of sodot with regard to this, and why sometimes the true tzaddik has to go through tremendous suffering to do this. So we see here something, that the true tzaddik, he's not comprehensible. There's no comprehension behind it. It's something completely different, which is why the only way we can understand it through the Talmud. It's like a stamp. The stamp, if you try to read the stamp, it's backwards until you press it on the paper, and then it starts. You can read it normally. So the same is true of the of the true tzaddik. The true tzaddik's a stamp until you press on the paper, which is the tamid, then you can read it. True tzaddik, sometimes he'll do something which looks totally twisted, upside down.
Yeah.
And you ask the question, what the heck is going on? But you're not supposed to try to learn from him. Try to learn from the true tamid, the tamid I met, or the tamid who's completely nullified to the true tzaddik, Rabbi Natan. So Rabbeinu told everyone, I want you guys to learn from Rabbi Natan with regard to the inyan of simcha, with regard to the inyan of tefillah. Rabbeinu used to pray in silence. Rabbeinu, his entire Dikudaman is about praying out loud.
Yeah.
Lesson 5 speaks about praying like thunder, praying out loud, and how that rectifies the mind, and how Rabbi Natan used to pray out loud. They one time went to, all the students went to, I forget, a certain town in Ukraine, where that Rav of the town was very close to Rabbeinu. And the students used to pray in a very different way, but when the Breslavers came, they used to pray out loud. And the Rav enjoyed it. And they all saw that, but he's like, why do you guys pray out loud when your Rabbi prays in silence? Because Rabbeinu used to pray in the Bechin of Shemen Bechashai. The oil pours quietly. Wine pours loud, but oil pours quietly. It's a Bechin as the Zohar mentions. So why did Tzaddik praise quietly when he tells everyone to pray out loud? So these are things that are beyond our comprehension, that we shouldn't enter and delve into because it's way beyond.
Yeah.
But when we try to nullify ourselves, then we'll begin to understand what's really going on, the relationship between the Tamid and the Tzaddik. So the first type of Bechina Mora Shamayim, the first type of Bechina, fear of heaven, comes from the Rav of the generation, the Chacham of the generation, because the Chacham has no fear except for fear of God. So therefore, he fulfills the fear of heaven perfectly. The true tzaddik fulfills the fear of heaven perfectly. Great. The Talmidim have the fear of the Rav, Bechinat Mora Rabach. As it says in Mora Rabach, the fear of your Rebbe. I think it's brought down in Pirkei Avot. And then the Banim, the children, have the third aspect of fear. Yesh lahem Mora Avahem. They have the fear of father and mother. Brought down in Yerushalmi Peah. In the Yerushalmi in Peah. That through these three aspects of fear, when they are joined together, when there's the Chacham, when there's the Talmid, and when there's the Ben, the son, the fear is perfect. So, let's see what it explains here. So, by the way, each aspect of fear has to include all the other two. Each aspect of fear encompasses the other ones. So, Mora Rabach will encompass Mora Shamayim and Mora Avaim, and the same is true of the other two, etc. Because they have to join to each other, they have to share within each other to create the perfection and the balance. So when you have the three Rashi HaKavim Yachad, when the three heads of the pillars come together, it creates a tikkun atik, the rectification of atik. And from there comes all the 10 sfirot in the form that we know, which is the triangle form. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Once you rectify the three bechinot of Yirah within the atik first. So Rabbeinu is explaining essentially how to go through Olam HaTikkun right now, through the bechinot of Yirah. So it's brought down in the Mea Nachal. The Rabbeinu says that through Yirah, כעל-ידי יראה זוכים לשלושה בחינות התבוננות עמוקה בתורה, איכות תמים, and השירות לקדושה. That through יראה a person merits התבוננות, deep התבוננות on Torah, איכות תמים, and holy wealth, right? Mm-hmm. And explains over there that these three bechinot essentially are connected to the three pillars of fear. So let's see how he explains it. Yirat harav, which is Mora Shamayim, the fear of the teacher. The fear that the teacher has is the fear of heaven, right? We talked about. Not to have fear of your teacher, but the fear the teacher himself has is fear of Shamayim.
Oh, that's
fear
what
of Hashem.
Talking about? Is it talking about the fear of that person? Or
the fear that the teacher possesses.
Okay.
Then there's the fear that the student possesses of the teacher.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
And then the student, and then the son has fear of the father and the mother.
Okay.
So the teacher himself has a fear of Shamayim, though, that is unmatched. Yirat harav Mora Shamayim. He bechinet hitbonanut amuka b'Torah. This represents the hitbonanut aspect. Because through this hitbonanut, baharav lidei Mora Shamayim. Through this hitbonanut, the Rav will be able to get to the Bechina of Mora Shamayim, fear of heaven. Yirat Talmid, the fear of the Talmid. Mora Rabach. What is the fear of the Talmid? That he should fear his teacher. Here Arichot Tamim, this represents Arichot Tamim, כי עיקר עניין Arichot Tamim, because the main idea of Arichot Tamim הוא להוסיף בכל יום תוספת קדושה, is to add every single day additional holiness. To add, to push the boundary of קדושה. בלימוד התורה ועבודת השם, studying Torah, עבודת השם, וזאת רק על ידי דרך הלימוד והעבודה שמקבל ברמב"ן. This is only possible through the limud and the avodah that he receives from his teacher. So what is Arichot Tamim? The Arichot Tamim represents the student's fear of the teacher, because the only way he's going to attain Arichot Tamim is thanks to his teacher. Mm-hmm. Thanks to the fear of his teacher that he's going to receive. And for this reason, he fears from his teacher, because he's receiving Arichot Tamim from the teacher. He has to have fear of him. The third thing is Yirat Ben, Mora Ava'em, the fear of the son, which is what? That he should fear his parents. What is that? This represents holy wealth. Because Ashirut is suggested by Nachalat Avot. What is it? The inheritance of your fathers. That which you inherit from your father and your mother. Ashirut, without any bother, without any toil, which is Ashirut Dikdusha essentially. Why Ashirut Dikdusha? Because Ashirut Dikdusha is when you don't have to work tremendously hard for your wealth. Which is the bechina of nachalat avot, because your father and your mother are just giving it to you. It's a bechina of ashirut dikdusha, just being granted to you as a gift. Therefore, a person should fear from them, because his wealth comes from them. So we see how these three aspects that come from Yirat Shamayim, which is Hitbonanut, Arichot Tamim, and Ashirut, are all connected to these three pillars of Yirah. And how these three pillars of Yirah are associated with one of those aspects. That's how the Mea Nachal brings it down, which is a nice connection. Let's see what it says in the Zohar Kadosh about Yirah. Let me see 1 second. No, we could wait on that. So we got the idea here, essentially?
Yeah, I mean,
as much as we can.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's continue a little bit.
ובחינת יראה של כל אחד מהשלוש הנ"ל צריך שיהיה כלול משלוש. דהיינו מורה של רב שהוא מורה שמיים. צריך שיהיה כלול בכל הטלה מוחי.
Yeah.
חכמה בינה דעת, כי עיקר יראתו של הרב הוא על ידי התבוננות גדולת הבורא יתברך שמו שחוקר ודורש בסקילה.
Do one more line.
נמצא שיראתו על ידי השכל, על כן צריך שתהיה יראה מלאה כל השלושה מוחים בחוכמתו ובינתו ודעתו, כולם יהיו מלאים מיראת השם.
Okay. So let's see here. Let me see this 1 second. No. Okay. ובחינת יראה של כל אחד מהשלוש הנ"ל, זה שיהיה כלול משלוש. Each and every aspect of those yira'ot we discussed, those types of fear, need to be included of three. Mishalosh shalosh. Each one needs to have all three included within it. All three pillars included within it. So what does that mean? Meaning each and every one of the three you mentioned above, Mora Shamayim, Mora Harav, Mora Rabach, and Mora Ava'en. Those three need to encompass, each one needs to encompass all the other two inside. Needs to have three in total. So, as we're going to explain. Then Mora Shel Harav, Shehu Mora Shamayim, meaning the fear of the teacher, which is what? The fear that he has of Hashem Yitbarach. The fear the teacher possesses, which is Yirat Shamayim. Tzarech sheyeh kalul bechol hatlat. Needs to bechol hatlat mochim. Needs to be encompassed, or that fear needs to include all the three types of mochim, all the three types of intellect. Chokhmah, bina, da'at. Right? Mm-hmm. And the reason for this is that the Yirah of the Rav is connected to the three mochim. Chokhmah, bina, da'at. Why? For the main fear of the Rav, which is Yirat HaRomemut. fear of God's exaltedness. Is through the contemplation of God's greatness. Blessed is His name. That the Chacham is constantly analyzing and deducing with his intellect about the Hashem's greatness and the awesome, intense wisdom of the Kabbalah, etc., and how Hashem engages in the world, etc. And through this, he attains Yirat Shamayim, because it's Chacham Ata Madrega to enter that Hitbonenut, and therefore through that Hitbonenut, he receives this Yirat Shamayim, which is what we talked about earlier. That the Yira of the teacher is the Bechina of Hitbonenut. Why? Because his Sechel is always going into the spheres of Hashem Yibach. That from the Hitbonenut he has, he's receiving the Yirat the fear of heaven. Because the student receives from the teacher the ability to attain Arichut Tamim, this is why the student is fearing of his teacher. And then obviously the son from his father and mother, because they're the ones who give him the Ashirut. So, this is how those three steps are associated with fear. What did he say? So the Chacham, the true Tzaddik, he's Doresh and Sichlo. He's constantly, deducing with his intellect, he's expanding with his intellect, he's going into those fears, those areas. We see his fear is created through his intellect, through his bonanut, through the Chokhmah bin Adat, through what we're saying is the bonanut. Therefore, this is why his fear needs to be infused essentially with all three mochin, with all three aspects of the intellect, which is included within every person. And the fear needs to be within his chokhmah, within his binah, and within his da'at, because he's using his sechel as a whole to arrive at that fear. So therefore, the fear needs to be infused within each and every aspect of his mochin, chokhmah, binah, bida'at, because he's using all of that to attain that fear. So he needs to bring that fear down to each level. And all the chokhmah and the binah and the da'at of the teacher needs to be filled with Yirat Shamayim. So the limud of the Chacham, we're going to see here, is going to be in the aspect of Chokhmah bin Abadat. The student, we're going to see the Chesed Gvuat Tiferet, and we're going to see later the son also. So let's see what it says here in the Zohar Kadosh and the Hagdama. The fear, which is the main thing, is for a man to fear his master. Because Hashem is great, He's ruler, He's the root and the source of all the worlds. And vis-a-vis Hashem, it's as if no one is existing, because He's so big, He's so awesome. A person needs to constantly picture this to arrive at fear of Shammai. That's what the Zohar Kadosh is saying. Because He's so big, He's the root of everything, and everyone is like as if they're nothing before Him. That's His greatness. So we discussed the fear of the teacher. Now let's go to the fear of the Talmid. V'yirat Talmid.
V'yirat Talmid ta'ayinu mara rabach. שהוא על ידי הלימוד שמקבל מרב צריכה שתהיה נמשכת כל כלכי הלימוד, שהוא גם כן בחינת שלוש קווים. היינו בחינת הרייתא, תליתא, תליתא.
Exactly. The fear of the Talmid is what fear? That he should have fear of his Rebbe. That he should have fear of the Kvod Harav. Why? Which is what? That this fear, that this fear is created through the limud, the teachings which he receives from his teacher. That those teachings, that avodat Hashem that he receives, that advice that he receives from his teacher, is all helping him arrive at that yirah. Yirat Shamayim, it has to be yirat. He has to have Yirat Shamayim, also the teacher, the student, and he has to have Yirah of his parents too. But it's saying, where is he getting that fear from? From his teacher. Which is why he has to have fear of his teacher, because that's where he's receiving all the other fears from. The fear of heaven, the fear of his father and mother, the fear in the right place is all receiving from who? From the teacher. And because he's receiving it from the teacher, therefore he needs to fear the teacher. This is why all three are connected. Because everybody has to fear their parents, everybody has to fear Hashem Yitbarach, and everybody has to fear the teacher. So because the student's receiving from the teacher, therefore he has to fear him. Because the teacher is receiving, is constantly engaging in the, in the supernal spheres and greatness of Hashem, he has to fear Hashem. And because the person is receiving ashiyot from his parents, therefore he has to fear his parents. So, what he's saying here is that the limud which the student is receiving from the teacher needs to be drawn into all the aspects of the teachings that he's receiving. Because what is the student going to, God willing, receive from the teacher? 3 aspects of Torah. Because all the categories of study that he's going to receive from his teacher is going to be in the category of 3 too. Not just Yirah is 3, but the category of study he's receiving from his teacher is 3 as well. Which is the sphere. Which Sfirot we're talking about, Chesed Gvura Tiferet, but what it's associating to is what? Bechinat Oraita Tilita. Bechinat Oraita Tilita, a threefold teaching. The Torah is a threefold teaching. Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. Or what some might say, Torah Shebiktav, Torah Sheba'al Peh, and Torah of the Kabbalah. Those 3 aspects. Talmud, Halachot, Agadot. That's what someone else says. Essentially, there's many different opinions to what the threefold teaching is, but threefold teaching, okay? Which now we're speaking about is Chesed Gvura Tiferet. Rabbeinu is not saying that you need to draw that Yirah, that the Talmud needs to draw the Yirah and the Chochmah Bin Adat, because he's not using his Sechel to arrive at that Yirah. He doesn't have the ability to get to the Yirah through Sechel. Yeah. He's receiving it from his teacher. But where is it in? It's in the, what do you call it? It's in the Bechina of his Limud. And where is that Limud place? In Chochmah, in Chesed Gvura Tiferet. Tiferet obviously being where the Torah stems from. As the Zohar Kadosh says, that the Torah comes from Tiferet. The Chacham, though, has to draw the Yirah within the Chochmah Bin Adat because he's using his Mochin to arrive at the Yirah. Because he has Yirat Shamayim. And the Yirat Shamayim comes from Hibonanut, which is in the Bechina of the Chabad. It's up here.
Yeah. Yeah, this is, yeah.
It's very, very deep Kabbalah here. But at a practical level, what that means for us, essentially, is when we're studying Advar of Rabbeinu, Dibur of Rabbeinu, Torah of Rabbeinu, what we're doing right now, the Yirat Shamayim we're seeing from him is because obviously we're going through these teachings, we're studying it, we're trying to apply what he's saying here. When we're studying from Rabbeinu HaKadosh, we need to draw that Yirah that we're receiving from Rabbeinu, and we need to increase our Yirah of him. Because he's giving us the Yirah that we also need to draw within the 3 aspects of our teaching, which could be Torah Shebiktav, Torah Sheba'al Peh, Torah Shebit Nistar, and the Kabbalah, and it could be within Torah Nevi'im Ketuvim and all that stuff. That's where we need to draw here. But essentially what Rabbeinu is saying is that because, or whoever you're studying from, it could be the Ramchal, it could be any tzaddik, that you should increase the fear of your Rav, because he's giving you the ability to draw that fear into your, to attain that fear. Essentially.
Yeah.
So, which is Oraita Telita. And therefore we said that the Yirah needs to be drawn within all 3 divisions of the Torah that he's learning, which we mentioned is an argument which one it is, but obviously there's 3-fold teaching. So, there's that. The third thing.
Are you going to notes or?
Honestly, read it. Yeah.
בירת הבן שהוא מורה אב ואם צריך להמשיכה בחינת נחלה אבות בחינת בית והון נחלה אבות.
Okay. So continue.
וצריך שתיפשט היראה על כל חלקי השירות שהם נחלת אבות כנ"ל, דהיינו בחינת 3 קווים בחינה. לעולם ישלם אדם מאבותיו, שליש בפרקטמיה ושליש בקרקע ושליש בידו.
Okay, perfect. That's where it actually continues, so you're right to continue, but we'll stop here and we'll explain the Bechinat Tamid. Now the fear of the Tamid, the fear of the son. Exactly. Now the fear of the son, which is the fear that he should have of his parents, he needs to draw down b'chol chelkei, he needs to draw down in all aspects of his wealth, which is what we're going to discuss as nachalat avot, inheritance of the forefathers. Meaning what? Hanachala, the inheritance, which is the inheritance of wealth that you receive, is from your avot, from your forefathers, essentially your parents.
Wait, so talking about parents or avot?
Your parents.
Okay.
Literally your parents. So what's he saying? Okay, so let's see what it says here. Bechinat Bait Vahon Nachalat Avot. Bait Vahon, home and wealth, a house and wealth, or great wealth. Nachalat Avot is an inheritance of the forefathers, of your parents, of your fathers. Okay, so what is Bait Vahon? Bait and Hon, representing Ashirut, comes from the Koach of Nachalat Avot, inheritance of the father. Meaning what? The fear of your father and your mother. So what's the idea here? The main suggestion, or the main hinting of what this Ashirut is doing, essentially, or the main essentially what he's discussing here is how it's referencing the last three sfirot. We talked about how the teacher has fear of heaven, and how he arrives at that fear of heaven is through his sechah. Instead, he needs to draw the yira within the chokhmah behind that. The Talmid receives yira through his teacher. Therefore, he needs to have fear of his teacher, and he needs to draw that fear within the three aspects of limud that he receives from his teacher. The threefold teaching. Here, you need to draw your wealth. You need to draw your yira within your three aspects of wealth. And where you're receiving your wealth? From your parents. And your parents are, he's going to explain how this has to do with yira. Where is the concept of yira here of your parents? And how it has to do with wealth. So what did it say? Because it's the way of man, that fear from those who give him parnasah and give him money. So you're going to receive fear from your parents because they are supporting you.
Yeah.
They're sustaining you. And therefore, by the fact that they're sustaining you, they're constantly being kind to you and this and that, they don't need to, you receive fear from them. So that fear needs to be drawn into the three aspects of the Ashirut, which we're going to discuss right now, that a person needs to divide his money into three categories, which is where the three aspects of wealth come from, what we're going to talk about. So let's see here. Let me see if there's something here. No. Let me see. There's so many commentaries here that I don't even know where to start. So let's see here. Okay. So I'll give a little thing here that it mentions here. And we're going to talk about how this has to do with Netzach Hod and Yesod, the lower three sfirot, the fear that a son should have of his parents, because the money has to do with the lower three sfirot, the Ragayim, which is Netzach and Hod and Yesod, the legs. Tzedek yikra'ehu leraglo. That Tzedek shall be declared to his feet. What is the idea of the feet? I think. 1 second. I think it's in the Gemara with regard to this pasuk. Ze mamono shel adam. This is the money of a person. Shema midina that makes him stand on his feet. What's it referencing here? That the money is associated with your feet because it gives you the ability. You're good. It gives you the ability to essentially sustain yourself, to live, to survive, essentially to hold your feet together, to be able to stand up. Because the mammon is called the raglaim, is an aspect of the feet, because it's shemek l'sfirot, netzach, hod, and yesod. So let's see what it says here. The Mea Nachal explains. It means to say, holy wealth is in three categories, three pillars. The first, he does his masau matan with faith. He does his business dealings with faith. Meaning his pragmatia, which is the first thing that we talked about earlier, which I'll just translate now. A person needs to essentially draw down that fear unto all three aspects of his wealth, all three divisions of his wealth, which is what? What is the wealth that we're talking about? The inheritance of the father and the mother. The hanu, which is what? That the yira should spread bechinat shalosh kavin into three categories. Bechinat yolam yishalesh adam yotash, as it says in the Gemara Baba Metzia, that a person should divide his money into three ways. Shlish b'chachmatia, a third in his business. Ushlish bekaka, a third in the ground, meaning for safeguarding. Ushlish be'edo. I think there's another argument as to what that means. It could be real estate, it could be actual land, whatever. And a third in his hand that he needs to.
What's in his hand?
Meaning that he should 3 for like expenses, essentially. I think. Exactly. So let's see what this has to do. As we were saying that with the Me'anachan, that the Ashirut Yidusha comes in 3 categories. Then you need to do Masao Matan with your wealth and Emunah. That's the first one. The third in business is referencing this. That you should go to business with Emunah. So when you do that, this is the Shlish B'Fchak Matya, the third in your business. That we talked about earlier. A person should divide his money into 3. You need to draw that yira into the 3 aspects. So how do you draw that yira into the business? Going to do masao matan be'emunah, meaning you say something, you do your word even if you lose money on it. You follow the halachot of Choshen Mishpat and Shulchan Aruch when it comes to business. You don't price gouge. You don't do this. You don't charge interest. You don't. All those things, those halachot of business, needs to have yira associated with it. So now you go to business with emunah.
Yeah.
So the yira is going to be a check for you to make sure that when you go to business, that you have your money of your business. And make sure that it's done b'kashrut. So the second thing, and not obviously like the men of Sodom that wanted to completely nullify Masao Matan be'emunah. People of Sodom didn't do business in faith at all. Second thing, the second, that through your ashirut you merit hitbonenut in Torah. And to know that without this, ashirut הוא רק בשביל נשים, שאין בחינת קרקע. And without this, without the bechina vitbonenut, meaning that's not your kavanah. The only kavanah it should be for, aside from the bechina vitbonenut, to help your money, give you the kli to be able to attain vitbonenut, is that it should be for nashim, for woman, for your wife, which is what? Karka.
Which is what?
The ground. Isha karka oram, I think it says, the woman is the ground of the world. What it says in the Gemara Kiddushin. Now what is this? As we're going to explain soon, I think Rabbeinu is going to bring this down, how the woman represents the karka, the ground. He's going to explain that soon, by the way. So this has to do with the ground, which is the woman. By the way, what it has to do with the ground also is because the Eretz is the Bechina Malchut, according to the Kabbalah. The earth is the Bechina Malchut, kingship, which is obviously associated with the female aspect. So the ground, Shlish Bekarka, third in the ground. When it says you have to divide your money a third in the ground, it's referencing the woman.
Okay.
The third thing, that through your wealth you should merit to give lots of tzedakah. To atone for your soul, which is all in the hand of Hashem. This is what it says. A third in your hand. A third in your hand, meaning whose hand? The hand of Hashem. To make sure to understand that your money is in God's hands. Therefore, give tzedakah.
He gives tzedakah with
your hand also. You're right. And all of these 3 things you can only merit through Yirat Shamayim, which is why a person needs to draw his Yirah into the 3 categories of Ashirut. Or else, if he goes to business, he can do, God forbid, fall into business dealing without faith. Or if he doesn't have Yirah in the place of, where his money is in the ground, then there's a blemish in that he's not giving enough kavod to his wife. He's not buying enough things for his wife. He's buying things for himself rather than for his wife, etc. Third thing, you're not yira within your hand, so that what? That the blemish in tzedakah. So, you merit all these 3 categories to the bechina yira, hanush al yira, meaning through yira, yiskel asot ha'masam matan le'emunah, you merit to do business in good faith, and through yira, a person merits to understand that the ashirut is only for the hitbonenut and without hitbonenut, it's only for women, for ktanei adat, for people who have low dat, for children, for women, for this and that, for kids. But for you, it's only the bechina hitbonenut. A man should be essentially using his wealth only for the bechina hitbonenut. And the third thing, yira, that he should merit to do tzedakah, give lots of tzedakah from his ashirut to atone for his soul, which is teluya be'ado, nafla. What did it say? Be'ado afkid ruchi. in his hand I place my ruach, my nefesh. Padita Hashem. Kriyat Shema, I think. Oh yeah, maybe also, I don't know.
Okay. Maybe.
Yeah, no. Be'etishan you're right. Exactly.
Or Yigdal. Yigdal. You know what
I think
Yigdal?
Some do.
Some do.
I think it's Adonai, no?
Maybe. Yeah. It's one of those either Adonai or Yigdal.
I'm lost there. You're right. So therefore, the Yira needs to go through all three categories of Ashirut.
Yeah.
So we talked about earlier. The Yirat Shamayim, needs to be spread out through all the essential kelim you're receiving from the person you're receiving Yira from. So what does that mean? The what do you call it? The teacher is receiving his Yira through his sechel. His Yirat Shamayim is received through his intellect by the fact that he's able to enter the spiritual world and receive fear of God through the Kabbalah, through the secret of the Torah, all these things. Therefore, he needs to draw his Yirat Shamayim into those three categories, which he uses to get to that Yira. Which is what? Chochmah Bina V'dat. Then, when it comes to the student, he's receiving a teacher from who? The Rav. And because he's receiving a teacher from the Rav, where is he receiving? Sorry, he's receiving his fear from.
Where's he putting his fear?
Where is he putting? He's receiving his essentially his. We talked about Arichut Yamim. He's receiving his Arichut Yamim through the Rav, because the Rav is helping him in the Avodat Hashem. So what? And obviously the tzaddik is using his hitbonenut to get to the Yirat Shamayim. He's entering the hitbonenut of Hashem. It's Chochmah Bina V'dat, and therefore he arrives through the hitbonenut through Yirat Shamayim, which then needs to spread that Yirat Shamayim through the Chochmah Bina V'dat. The Talmid, he's what do you call it? He's receiving what do you call it from his teacher, the Arichut Yamim, doing better in Avodat Hashem, doing all these things, right? And because of that, he needs to what do you call it? Fear his Rebbe, because his Rebbe is allowing him to get to the Bechina of Arichut Yamim, and therefore he needs to put his fear in which three categories? The three tools which his Rebbe gives him, which is the Oraita Tlitla, the threefold teaching. And then the third thing is the son, who needs to who receives ashirut from his parents, and therefore because he receives ashirut from his parents, he needs to fear his parents, because a person should normally fear the person who is essentially sustaining him. You should give him kavod. So he needs to draw down the Yirat Shamayim in the three categories of his wealth, which is the third in business, the third in your hand, and the third in the ground. The very structured. You know,
honestly, it actually makes much more sense once we get to the end.
Exactly.
Because now it's like it's feeding off each other.
Exactly. They're all.
Now it's made okay.
And they all need to share from each other, because obviously the person who has fear of his parents needs to have fear of Hashem and fear of the teacher too.
No, now I'm seeing it much more clear.
Exactly. Yeah. So, this is what exactly that's where we are at. So that's what we were mentioning earlier. I messed up the wrong pasuk earlier that has to do with money and feet. So what did it say? That kol hayekum, and all the subsistence that was at their feet. So in the Gemara Psachim, what did it say? Amar Rabbi Elazar, zim mamono shel adam. Rabbi Elazar said this is the money of a person. All the things that are at their feet. What does that mean at their feet? This is the person's money. Shema mido al hagrav, that makes him stand on his feet. So we see the money has to do with netzach, hod, and yesod, which has to do with the legs. The right leg, the left leg, and the Brit Kodesh. So, nice. Now, ושלושה.
ושלושה חלקים אלו שיש בעשירות, אם כנגד שלושה פעמים עשירות שנזכר בתורה, כי אל בכל התורה כולו נזכר עשירות, כי אם שלוש פעמים אלו דיינו. איזה סדום, כמו שכתוב, ולא תאמר אני השארתי את אברהם, ואצל רחל ולאה, כמו שכתוב, כי כל העושר אשר הציע אלוקים וכו', ואצל שקלים, כמו שכתוב, הישיר לא ירבה.
Nice.
Weiter, oder?
No, because it's about to go into another subject right now. Okay, it's connected, but it's about to enter a threefold topic right now. Okay, so these three categories that exist within Ashirut wealth correspond to the 3 times that wealth is mentioned in the entire Torah as a whole.
Just 3 times?
Yeah, the word Ashirut.
Oh, the word Ashir, okay.
Yeah. כי בכל התורה, כולו לא נזכר השירות, כי אם 3 פעמים יעלו. Because the entire Torah as a whole, Ashirut is only mentioned 3 times. The word Ashir, Ashirut, only mentioned 3 times. And it's coming to hint to us the 3 aspects of Ashirut and Kedusha, of holy wealth. And how it essentially can be benefit a person. That we're talking about earlier, Ashirut and Kedusha, like we're talking about Kesef and Zahav, like just simple Ashirut and Kedusha. Then we talked about Arichot Yamin, and we're talking about this Bechinat Tzedakah. Okay, so let's see what this has to do. Dahan, meaning what? As we see from where it's at Sodom, by Sodom, by the city of Sodom. It says when Abraham went to the king of Sodom, that Abraham went to Sodom, and Sodom offered him a lot of things, and Abraham said, "I don't want anything to do with your wealth." Because I think Abraham saved Sodom in the war. I think in the War of the Kings, Abraham saved Sodom, and Sodom wanted to repay Abraham. And what did it say? What did it say over there? V'lo tomar ani ha'esharti et Abraham. So that you shall not say that I gave wealth to Abraham. Meaning what?
I gave wealth to Abraham?
Abraham, yeah. Meaning what? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning what? That Hashem gave me wealth in Ashirut Kedusha. That Abraham was heavy very much in Kesef and Zahav, etc., etc. So that what? That people wouldn't say, or that so that nobody would say, so that Melech Sodom would say that I gave wealth to Abraham. It was only Hashem. Ashirut Kedusha. It wasn't impure wealth. Tough. So Abraham rejected that money. Etzel Rachel Leah. But to go to Rachel and Leah is the second form. It says that they told Yaakov, because they wanted to leave the house of their father Lavan and to go with him to Eretz Yisrael. What did they say? That all the wealth that my God, that God has, Itzil, I think saved, essentially saved from our father, who it is for us and for our children.
This is when they were leaving the land?
This is what they were. This is when they were telling Yaakov that they wanted to leave.
No.
So, and what did they finish? How did they finish the pasuk? And now, everything that God will say to you, shall do. We'll follow you.
Mm-hmm.
So now, that's the second thing, meaning that the wealth that we talked about has to do with the woman. For our women, for our children. Asher Yitzil Elokim, Hilanu Elvanenu is for us and for our children. Meaning for you it's for Idbonanut. But aside from Idbonanut, the rest of the money goes to the children and the kids. Be'et Shkalim, and with regard to the Shkalim, the third time, with regard to the shekel, the wealthy shall not give more for the machatzit shekel. That everybody needs to give half a shekel. The adal lo yamit, the poor person must not. Exactly. So, the adal lo yamit min machatzit shekel lechaper nafshotechem, to atone for your souls. Which is why the Me'anachal earlier explains having to do with atonement for soul. Where is the soul placed? In the hand of Hashem. All these, so in the hand, a third in your hand has to do with the tzedakah. The third in the ground has to do with the woman, which is where Rachel and Leah are claiming that the money is theirs. That the money should be for them. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the Ashirut goes to you and your Yibonanut. And then the first one is in the third in business, which is what?
Wait, which one's the Yibonanut? I thought the third. Yeah, where does your Yibonanut go? If a third is towards the third is towards your wife, and
meaning aside from the
business, third's towards your business, no?
A third's towards the business.
So what's the Hibonanut then part?
The Hibonanut thing is that the man should use only the wealth to attain Hibonanut. Meaning that's the only reason why.
And he attains it by putting it into these 3 things.
Essentially, yeah, by having Yirah within the 3 forms of Ashirut.
Okay.
That's how you attain Hibonanut. Because the Yirah will lead to Arichot Yamim, the Arichot Yamim will lead to Ashirut, and Ashirut will tend to Hibonanut. So yeah, when the tzaddik is able to, or when a person is able to draw, according to his Madriga, Yirah within the 3 aspects of his Ashirut, of course now the yira at the level of ashirut, just at the level of netzach, the level of mora avaim is complete there. When you rectify that, which is already madriga, then you have the other one, which is fear of your teacher and then fear of Hashem himself. So, by the way, let me know how long
you go in like 5 minutes.
Okay. Tough. So we'll finish up essentially. And by the shkalim, which is the bechinat tzedakah that we're talking about, the wise man should, the wealthy man should not give more, and the poor man should not lessen the amount. Mm-hmm. That from everybody should give half a shekel to atone for your souls. And this is the aspect of tzedakah. That through tzedakah, a person is able to atone for himself and to not be punished. Tzedakah tatimim avet, all these things, and it merits arichut yamim. Of course, through tzedakah, a person merits arichut yamim. So now we're going to explain how now we're going to explain how the 3 times that ashirut is mentioned in the Torah.
I love when he does this, when he brings in, like, he gets a crazy idea and then
he goes everywhere, bro.
And then he brings in like the chumash, and it's like, it's
exactly. They need to be received by the 3 categories of ashirut that are mentioned in the Gemara and mischa, like we mentioned earlier, in trade, in business, in the ground, and in your hand. So now Rabbeinu is going to explain how the 3 mentioned in the Torah are connected to this. Because essentially we were just explaining earlier that ashirut is mentioned 3 times in the Torah. Rabbeinu just came to prove that, right? Mm-hmm. But how is that connected to the 3 levels the 3 categories a person should spread his yira into within his money? Because that's just explaining 3 types of ashirut. 3 times ashirut mentioned in the Torah, but how it connects to where you should place your yira within your money, your ashirut, which is divided into 3. That's a different thing. So Rabbeinu is going to explain how the Torah, within the 3 times it mentioned ashirut, is hinting to each 3 categories of ashirut v'dusha, which is an amazing thing, which we talked about already a little bit. Yeah. But he's going to explain that right now. So we'll almost finish section Dalet, so we'll do that. I'm going to put this.
I can turn it off?
I think so, yeah, you're good.